I want you to take a quiet moment with me right now. Close your eyes if you can, or simply let your thoughts settle. Feel the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Notice the little movements of your life that have brought you here, to this very second, to this very moment of reflection. Sometimes, the simplest awareness can feel like a prayer without words. I know that life has carried you through storms and silences that no one else seems to notice. And I know that somewhere in your heart you have been waiting, not for a person necessarily, but for the recognition that your presence in this world matters. That the way you love, the way you hope, the way you forgive is seen, even if only by God. And I want to speak to that truth today, about the unseen ways God moves hearts through the beauty He has planted in you. There's a quiet miracle in the human soul, a reflection of God's own presence that often goes unnoticed. Scripture reminds us that God sees the heart before the outward form. When David was chosen, it was not for his size or his strength, but for the integrity and devotion dwelling in his soul. In the same way, the value in you, the light in you, is first a thing of spirit, unseen to the eyes, but evident in the eyes of those whose hearts are awake. You may have wondered, do they notice? Perhaps it is a person you feel connected to, or perhaps it is a season of waiting for someone who mirrors the divine patience and kindness that you carry. And the answer is this: what you cultivate within yourself, your honesty, your courage, your gentleness, does not go unnoticed. Even when words fail, even when proximity fails, there is a divine recording of your faithfulness in the spiritual realm. Your soul speaks a language that cannot be silenced. I've seen it happen in my own life and in the lives of people I have prayed with. Someone discovers a depth in another person that they cannot name, a quiet humility, a steady faith, a warmth that flows without demand. And in that discovery, their hearts are moved beyond words. They feel it, yes, but they may not express it immediately, and that is okay. For just as God works in seasons, hearts are stirred in time. Psalm 37 reminds us that those who wait for the Lord are renewed. They rise up with strength and patience. That waiting is not passive. It is a sacred cultivation of character. I want you to consider something about your own journey. You have been shaped by trials, by mistakes, by the tender and painful work of learning who you are and what you value. That shaping is not just for your own benefit. It is part of preparing you for the recognition of your worth in someone else's life. And it is not about changing yourself for another. It is about growing into the fullness of who God created you to be. There is a depth in authenticity that draws people silently, irresistibly. The Bible reminds us that the beauty of a person's character is seen as fine perfume. It lingers, even when they are not present. Perhaps you have been discouraged by the world's shallow measures of worth, by appearances, by instant gratification, by words that fail to match action. And yet, God whispers that true connection is never hurried, never forced. In fact, some of the most profound recognition comes when someone is watching not what you do to impress them, but what you do in quiet obedience to God. The love you show in the small acts, the integrity you maintain in private, the kindness that costs you nothing to give, these are the seeds of impact on a soul that is ready to receive them. I also want to talk to you about forgiveness, not as a fleeting sentiment, but as a spiritual discipline. When you forgive, you heal parts of yourself that otherwise would remain hidden. You create space in your heart for the other person to see you fully. Ephesians reminds us to be kind and tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as Christ forgave us. This is not about bending for someone else. It is about reflecting the mercy you have received, allowing your soul to shine with the light of understanding. And often, it is in that transparency and grace that someone's heart is profoundly moved, without them even realizing why. There's also the mystery of timing, which is perhaps the hardest lesson to accept. You may feel ready, you may feel prepared, yet the recognition of your value in another person's life may come slowly. Ecclesiastes tells us there is a time for everything, a season for every purpose under heaven. This is not a passive surrender, but a patient alignment with the divine rhythm. Your worth is not diminished while waiting. Your gifts are not wasted while unseen. God is arranging, preparing, and nurturing the hearts of those involved, so that when recognition happens, it is deep, unforced, and lasting. Let us pause to reflect on self-worth. Many believers stumble into the trap of defining themselves by external validation. And while community and relationships are sacred, they are never the source of your true value. That resides in your identity as God's beloved. Your soul, with all its scars and victories, its laughter and tears, is precious in His eyes. When someone's heart is moved by what they discover in you, it is ultimately a reflection of God's own presence in your life, not merely your own effort. I want to share a quiet insight about observation. People often underestimate the power of simply being present. By being consistently authentic, patient, and faithful in small matters, at work, at home, in friendships, you teach others without preaching. You reveal character that is rare in a hurried, distracted world. Proverbs tells us that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a person's quiet integrity can turn a wandering heart toward hope. You do not need to announce your goodness. Let it radiate in the everyday, and those who are ready will notice, deeply and enduringly. Now, let us consider vulnerability. There is courage in being open about struggles, doubts, and fears, without expecting anyone else to fix them. In showing your humanity, you invite connection that is real, not performative. The Apostle Paul spoke about strength in weakness. Sometimes, it is our wounds that carry the most light. When someone sees your willingness to remain faithful despite pain, they encounter the resilience and beauty of a soul guided by God, and their hearts are moved in ways words cannot capture. I also want you to embrace joy as a form of spiritual witness. There is a kind of peace and brightness in someone who is grateful, who laughs authentically, who rests in God's providence. In Philippians, Paul encourages rejoicing always, not as superficial cheerfulness, but as grounded faith that persists through trials. That light, that quiet joy, touches people before they even speak to you. And often, it is the unseen quality of steadfast delight in the Lord that draws a soul beyond what they thought possible. Consider your prayers for others, not just for a partner, but for anyone whose heart you hope to influence with goodness. It shapes you. It aligns your intentions with God's wisdom and patience. When you pray for love, for connection, or for understanding, it does not manipulate the outcome. It refines the vessel, your heart. And God honors that alignment. Even before someone sees your external actions, He is preparing their heart to recognize the value embedded in your spirit. There is also the lesson of contentment. Sometimes, in the pursuit of recognition or closeness, we overlook the importance of being fully present in the life God has given us now. Learning to be content with your season, with your current gifts, with the small miracles of today, allows your soul to radiate completeness. That completeness is magnetic, not in a worldly sense, but in a deeply spiritual sense. Someone who encounters it is moved, not by a checklist of accomplishments, but by the quiet testimony of a soul living faithfully. I want to speak briefly about listening. Truly listening, without interrupting, without offering immediate solutions, without judgment, is a reflection of God's own presence. When you listen, you honor the life and experience of another, and in doing so, you reveal the integrity and depth of your own soul. People remember those moments. They are touched, often without fully articulating why. And it is in these small, sacred interactions that a soul can be moved beyond words. Sometimes, the recognition we seek is not romantic. Sometimes it is friendship, mentorship, or simple human appreciation. And the principle is the same. God uses the presence of your spirit to move hearts quietly. As 1 Peter reminds us, be prepared to give an answer for the hope that is in you, but do so with gentleness and respect. The answer is not spoken in flamboyance. It is lived in patience, kindness, and faith. Let us pause to acknowledge the pain that may have come from past misunderstandings or rejections. These are not signs of inadequacy. They are part of refining. Gold is purified by fire, and the soul is refined by trials. When someone eventually recognizes your worth, it will not be merely tolerance. They will see the strength, resilience, and fidelity that were forged quietly in moments when you could have given up. That depth is what moves a heart beyond words. I want to invite you to reflect on humility as a conduit for connection. Humility is not self-denial. It is awareness of your gifts without arrogance. It is the willingness to admit what you do not know, to remain teachable, to acknowledge the grace of God in your life. When humility is coupled with competence, kindness, and authenticity, it becomes irresistible to a heart seeking depth and truth. And now consider hope, not as naive expectation, but as quiet endurance. Romans reminds us that hope does not disappoint, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Spirit. Hope allows us to act without desperation, to love without attachment, to give without expectation. When your soul exudes this hope, those around you are drawn not to a person, but to the reflection of God's faithfulness within you. Let us also acknowledge patience with oneself. Too often we chastise ourselves for timing we cannot control. But God's plan is often a slow work, like the growth of trees whose roots run deep before any fruit appears. By embracing your own process, by forgiving your missteps, and by nurturing your gifts, you create a spirit that others cannot help but notice. They may be moved not by what you say, but by the way you embody quiet perseverance and integrity. As we near the close of this reflection, I want to speak of gratitude. There is a peace that comes from appreciating what is, rather than longing solely for what is absent. Gratitude aligns the soul with God's presence. And when gratitude permeates your being, it resonates. Someone may not be able to name it, but they feel it. They feel the quiet light of someone who knows that life, in all its trials and joys, is a gift to be stewarded faithfully. And so, my dear friend, I leave you with this. Continue to live with integrity, courage, and patience. Continue to nurture the goodness in you that has been shaped by prayer, reflection, and experience. The hearts of others will encounter it in ways that surpass understanding, and in those encounters, the Spirit is present, moving quietly, gracefully, without rush or force. If this message has touched something in you, consider leaving a kind word in the comments, or sharing a reflection with someone who needs hope today. And if you desire more moments of reflection like this, subscribing to Angelic Light's channel allows you to join a community of seekers walking gently in faith and contemplation. Remember, your worth is not measured by immediate recognition, but by the love, patience, and faithfulness you live daily. God sees it. The right hearts will recognize it. And your soul, in its quiet constancy, will continue to shine, beyond words, beyond measure, in ways both seen and unseen. Let us close with a quiet prayer of gratitude and trust. Lord, thank you for the depths you have placed in our hearts, for the patience you teach us, and for the ways you prepare us and others to meet in understanding and love. May our souls reflect your light, and may we move through life with grace, faith, and hope. Let us stay here a little longer, without rushing away from the stillness. There is something sacred about lingering, about not demanding the moment to conclude before it has finished its work in us. Faith is often formed in these unhurried spaces, where nothing dramatic happens on the surface, yet something steady is being restored underneath. I want to speak to the part of you that sometimes wonders if your gentleness is mistaken for weakness. The world has a way of rewarding noise, speed, and self-promotion, while overlooking quiet faithfulness. But Scripture teaches us that the meek inherit what truly lasts. Meekness is not passivity. It is strength that has learned restraint. It is power that chooses peace. And when someone truly sees that in you, it leaves a mark on their soul that cannot be erased by louder voices. There are people who encounter many personalities in their lifetime, but only a few spirits that feel safe. Safety of the soul is rare. It comes from consistency, emotional honesty, and a heart that does not weaponize truth. When someone discovers that you are a place of rest rather than confusion, it unsettles them in a good way. They may not know how to articulate it. They may even resist it at first, but it lingers with them because it reflects the character of God, who invites the weary to find rest in Him. You may not realize how deeply your self-control speaks. The moments when you could have reacted harshly, but chose restraint. The times you could have walked away bitter, but stayed kind. Proverbs tells us that a person who governs their spirit is stronger than one who conquers a city. That kind of strength is invisible until it is noticed. And once it is noticed, it cannot be forgotten. There is also the matter of emotional maturity, which grows slowly and quietly. Emotional maturity is not the absence of feeling, but the wisdom to respond rather than react. It is knowing when to speak and when silence serves love better. Ecclesiastes reminds us that there is a time to speak and a time to be silent. When someone observes that discernment in you, they see a depth that suggests you have walked with God through real life, not just ideas about faith. Some of you have carried responsibility early in life. You learned empathy not from books, but from necessity. You learned patience by enduring uncertainty. You learned prayer because you needed somewhere to put your fears. Those lessons shaped your soul in ways that feel heavy at times, but they also made you perceptive, grounded, and real. When someone begins to recognize that history within you, they are moved not by romance or admiration alone, but by respect. I want to gently address the fear of being overlooked. That fear can quietly erode joy if left unattended. But Jesus reminded His followers that even a cup of water given in love is seen by God. Nothing offered with sincerity is wasted. In the same way, no sincere expression of who you are disappears unnoticed. It may not be acknowledged immediately, but it is held, remembered, and eventually understood by those whose hearts are ready. There are seasons when God allows distance, not as punishment, but as protection. Distance creates clarity. It allows growth without pressure. It prevents attachment from becoming dependency. During these seasons, your soul learns to stand rooted in God, rather than leaning too heavily on another person's response. And when someone eventually encounters you after that growth, they sense the difference. They feel the stability. They recognize the peace that was cultivated in solitude. Let us talk about the discipline of waiting without resentment. Waiting becomes painful when it is filled with comparison. But when waiting is anchored in trust, it becomes formative. Isaiah spoke of those who wait on the Lord, renewing their strength. Renewal does not mean inactivity. It means your inner life is being restored, clarified, and strengthened while you continue to live faithfully. Some hearts are moved not by charm, but by consistency. They notice how you show up the same way, whether you are celebrated or ignored. They observe that your values do not shift with convenience. That kind of steadiness speaks of character. And character is what sustains connection long after feelings fluctuate. When someone realizes that about you, it reaches deeper than attraction. It touches their understanding of what is possible in a relationship shaped by faith. You may have wondered why you feel deeply in a world that seems to skim the surface. But depth is not a flaw, it is a calling. Jesus often withdrew from crowds to speak to individuals. He noticed the unseen, the overlooked, the quietly faithful. If you resonate with that rhythm, it is because your spirit recognizes the voice of God in stillness more than in spectacle. Let us reflect on trust. Trust grows where there is alignment between words and actions. When someone observes that your words carry weight because your life supports them, it builds a sense of reverence. They begin to listen differently. They become attentive, even cautious, because they recognize sincerity. And sincerity has a way of disarming defenses without force. There is also beauty in your willingness to grow. You do not pretend to have arrived. You remain teachable. You reflect. You apologize when needed. You change when conviction leads you to do so. That posture mirrors the humility of Christ, who washed the feet of those he led. When someone witnesses that humility paired with wisdom, it unsettles shallow expectations and awakens deeper respect. Some of you have learned to love without ownership. You support without demanding. That balance is rare, and it reflects a heart secure in God rather than in outcomes. When someone encounters that kind of love, they often do not recognize it immediately. But over time, it becomes clear that they felt more like themselves around you, and that realization stays with them. Let us consider how God uses ordinary moments to reveal extraordinary depth. A conversation that felt simple to you may have stayed with someone for weeks. A kind response you barely remember may have met them on a difficult day. Jesus taught that the kingdom of God grows like a seed, quietly, invisibly, until one day it is unmistakably present. Your life carries those seeds. There is also the quiet courage it takes to remain hopeful without becoming hardened. You have chosen not to close yourself off, even after disappointment. That choice is not naive. It is faithful. It reflects trust that God's goodness is not exhausted by human failure. When someone perceives that resilience in you, it moves them, because it points beyond you to the faith that sustains you. I want to speak to those who worry they are too much or not enough. You are neither. You are exactly what God has formed, and your refinement is ongoing. The pressure to reduce yourself or to perform is not from God. He invites you to abide, to remain, to grow naturally. When someone truly sees you abiding rather than striving, they sense peace rather than tension. That peace is what moves hearts beyond explanation. Sometimes, recognition comes not in confession, but in changed behavior. Someone becomes more attentive, more thoughtful, more careful with your heart. These shifts often happen quietly, because what they have discovered in you is not something they want to treat casually. Wisdom teaches us to observe fruit rather than demand declarations. Let us also speak of prayerful boundaries. You have learned when to say no without guilt, when to step back without bitterness. Boundaries are not walls, they are doorways of discernment. They reveal self-respect grounded in God's truth. When someone notices that you honor yourself without arrogance, they understand that you are not easily consumed or discarded. That understanding carries weight. There is grace in accepting that not every realization leads to immediate expression. God works internally before anything becomes visible. Just as he spoke to Elijah, not in the wind or fire, but in a gentle whisper, he often moves hearts in quiet ways. Trust that what is genuine does not need to announce itself prematurely. As we continue, let us breathe in gratitude for the person you are becoming, not just the one you have been. Sanctification is a lifelong process. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. God is patient, and his work is thorough. I want you to remember that your soul does not need to prove its worth. It needs to remain rooted. Colossians speaks of being rooted and built up in faith. Roots grow underground, unseen, but they determine everything above ground. When someone discovers the depth of your roots, they recognize stability, nourishment, and endurance. Let us rest in the truth that God delights in the quiet faith you live daily. Not every testimony is dramatic. Some are steady, faithful, and deeply transformative over time. And those testimonies often touch hearts in ways that dramatic moments never could. If you are listening to this and feeling a sense of peace settling in, receive it without analysis. Peace is often the confirmation that truth has been spoken. Let it remain with you as you go about your life. May you continue to walk gently, love faithfully, and trust deeply. May your soul remain open, grounded, and anchored in God's wisdom. And may whatever has been stirred in the hearts of others through you unfold in the timing that brings clarity, respect, and peace rather than confusion or strain. We place all of this in God's care, trusting not in outcomes but in His character. And that trust is enough.